everyone, it's Alina, and welcome back to episode 5 of Entrepreneur Chit-Chat with Alina. I'm so stoked for today's episode, you guys. I am honestly going to be joined today by one of my personal role models and an incredible entrepreneur, which is, it's just so honestly surreal and insane for me to have somebody that I look up to so much and that is so successful in the business world on my show today. So I am just trying to invite him in. We're just waiting for him to get in. I'm so excited, you guys. I honestly can't contain my excitement. It's pretty crazy. Hi!
Hey there, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Like I was just telling everyone that was hopping on, you're one of my personal role models. And so to be able to have you on and get to pick your brain a little bit about your career and all the amazing things that you've done, it's so such an honor for me.
Oh wow, I actually you're one of my role models. Lindsay and I, my wife and I, we have two kids, two daughters, and we always my wife and I are both entrepreneurs. And so we think a lot about this idea of entrepreneurship and sort of teaching entrepreneurship. And one of the things, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna get my camera a little straight here. One of the things we talk about is that, how do you raise entrepreneurial children? Because frankly, we'd love them to be entrepreneurs and they may not want to, they may want to be, whatever they want to be. But I often reference you in that you can leave breadcrumbs as a parent to encourage innovation, to encourage thinking differently, and to find creative solutions to problems. But ultimately, you have to sort of have it or you don't. And obviously, you exemplify that. And you've been doing it since you were really, really young. So I wonder if one day there are posters of you up on kids' walls all over the planet, as opposed to, rock stars or celebrities, because frankly, so many people I think would benefit from understanding entrepreneurship better.
That made my day. Thank you so much. Well, before we get too far into the conversation, I know you, obviously, but why don't you just introduce yourself, give a quick name, age if you want, and your current job title.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Harley Finkelstein. I am 37 years old. I am the president of Shopify. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13, so you'll appreciate that. When I was 13 years old, funny, I think my mom is actually watching right now, so she's probably nodding somewhere. Mom Fizzle, if you see her there, I think she's watching. When I was 13, I wanted to be a DJ. No one would hire me because I didn't know how to DJ. I had no skills, I had no experience. So I decided that I would start my own DJ company and hire myself. And that was really the first time in my entire life that I discovered that entrepreneurship is this incredible tool in which to solve problems, that I can use entrepreneurship as a way to get what I want. And that has sort of been how I've always viewed entrepreneurship. Rather than a way to just make money or to build wealth, it's this tool you have in your tool belt that you can take out as needed. When I was 17, I was a first-year student at McGill University, and my parents couldn't support me anymore. And so I used entrepreneurship again. I started a t-shirt business, making t-shirts for universities all over the world. And again, entrepreneurship was that tool that I took out to solve the problem. At this point, it wasn't because I want to be a DJ. It was actually more that, oh, and your mom's on here too. This is so cool. Your mom and my mom should talk. But it was this thing that I can use and utilize as needed. And I've been an entrepreneur again since I was a kid, and now I get to spend all of my time helping others either scale their entrepreneurial ambitions or become entrepreneurs for the first time. And right now on Shopify, every 26 seconds, a brand new entrepreneur gets their first sale. So an entrepreneur is basically born or created on Shopify every 26 seconds or so. And Shopify's entire mission, my mission in life, and that's the reason why Shopify is my life's work, the Venn diagram overlap is completely aligned and overlapped, is we think more people should try their hand in entrepreneurship for whatever their reasons are, whether it's passion or money or solving a problem. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the same thing for me. You know, at 7 years old, you're not thinking, I'm going to start a company because I want to make money. But I wanted to eat candy without my parents saying no. So, you know, there really is such, you know, a wide variety of things that entrepreneurship can fulfill. And that was
Totally
such
agree.
an that was such an amazing introduction. I think it's so funny how our parents are in the comments.
Well, actually, like it may be worthwhile mentioning this, you know, and I know quite a bit about your story. But one thing that my parents did all throughout my life, they didn't necessarily have a ton of money to give me, uh, but what they did do was anytime I had a silly business idea, a random thought, I'm going to start this new thing, you know, I guess what today would be referred to as a side hustle. My parents made me business cards, and it said Harley Finkelstein, CEO or founder of, you know, silly business. And in hindsight, at the time, that didn't feel like much. But in hindsight, looking back now that I have children of my own, I realize what an incredible confidence booster that is. It validated me. It provided me with this naive optimism that I actually can do this because my parents made me business. They made it real for me before it actually was real. And for anyone out there that wants to encourage people in your life to keep going or to pursue an idea, doing something as small as creating a bunch of silly business cards on a printer or making them a mug with their company logo on it, that stuff really matters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the emotional support
Right.
that really makes all the difference, especially in kids. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
want to be listened to, they want to be heard. Um, and so you talked a little bit about this already, but you started your very first official company at 17, I think I read. Now, tell me a little bit about that experience and, well, what the company was and how it came to fruition.
So I was born in Montreal and I grew up in South Florida, not too far from Miami. And I went to university in Canada at McGill University. Um, One, because Montreal is just such an amazing city. If anyone watching has been there, you know how great it is. But two, I was able to get what is sort of the equivalent of in-state tuition because I was born in Canada in Montreal. I was able to get, I think my tuition at McGill was like $1,800 a year and very, very affordable, whereas the US schools were just not affordable at all. So I got back to Montreal in September, August 2001. September 11th happens, things go really rough with my family, and I'm left with this choice. Option one is move back down south and live with my family there and kind of figure it out. Or option two is stay in Montreal and actually uh, figure it out. And a friend of mine was on student council at McGill University, and he mentioned to me that if I were going to start some business, I should think about starting a t-shirt business. And the reason, at least in his in his view, to start this was that McGill was spending like he thought $25,000 a semester on t-shirts. So your first day at university, you get like a t-shirt, a bag, a hat. It says Faculty of Education or Faculty of Science or Faculty of Arts or Go Redmen or Go whatever your school mascot is. And every year, this procurement process happened. At the same time, Montreal happened to be a city with a deep history in the apparel business. There's a sector in Montreal called Chabanel. They call it the schmata business, which is a Yiddish term for rags. But you know, companies like American Apparel was built out of Montreal, Buffalo Jeans, Parasuco Jeans, like these mega companies were built there. Essence, like all these great companies were built out of Montreal. And so without giving it any more thought, I decided I would connect the two things. I knew that the demand side was that McGill needed t-shirts. I was a student at McGill. The supply side was this is probably a good place for me to go ahead and figure out who can manufacture t-shirts. How do I learn how to screen print? And I just taught myself the business. And I went to McGill and I said, I don't have no experience, but I am a student here. And I brought in friends of mine who were McGill students to do like a mini fashion show in the student council office. And so as they sort of lined up all the different vendors in terms of like selecting they're going to buy t-shirts from, most of the vendors were these, you know, old white dudes in, you know, suits with these catalogs and they're flipping through stuff. And it was completely uninspired. Whereas now I come in, and I want to make t-shirts for McGill students by a McGill student. I have this mini fashion show. I don't bring a catalog. Rather, I just printed the t-shirts myself. So they actually saw what the shirts would look like in real time. And because I had no overhead, I was able to compete on price. And that was about 20 years ago at this point, actually, almost exactly 20 years ago. And I remember getting that first purchase order from McGill a couple weeks later, and it changed everything. I was able to survive. I was able to make a living. I was able to help my family. I found independence through entrepreneurship. And I spent the next couple of years, the moms in this call are not going to like this part, but it's honest. I spent the next couple of years not really focused on my studies, but rather focused on selling t-shirts, and ended up building a really great little business for myself throughout undergrad, through university.
That's amazing. And this is actually very similar to what my dad did in college. He had a t-shirt business at Michigan State, and
Amazing.
that was his first business too. And so this really kind of resonates with me as, you know, it's a real thing. You know, it's a real first company. And when my dad told me his story of his first company, I was like, wow, he started a company too. I can start a company also.
Yeah.
And so hearing
what you talk about is so interesting. I was on a TV show this over the summer. It was called I Quit. It was a show. It was a amazing TV show we put together with partners at Discovery. It was on Discovery Channel, and we got a group of entrepreneurs who there were five businesses, so 10 entrepreneurs in total, who had full-time jobs but had side hustles. And the idea was we were going to encourage them in episode 1 to quit their jobs and pursue the side hustle. And at the end of the show, we were going to give $100,000 away to the quote unquote the winner. And the winner of I Quit season 1 was this amazing entrepreneur named Mike D. And he is Mike D's barbecue sauce. If anyone follows me on social media, you know that I talk a lot about Mike D. What Mike didn't say on camera, that he told me sort of after the fact, and I've been talking a lot about this because it's an important story, is when I asked him, why did you start this business? He usually starts by saying, because I make this amazing barbecue sauce and I want to share that gift with the world. And that is accurate. He does make beautiful, great barbecue sauce. It's delicious. We have tons of it here. We use it all the time. But he then goes on to say this. He says that he didn't know any entrepreneurs. He didn't know anyone that had a family business. He didn't know anyone who knew about entrepreneurship, knew about starting small business. And he wanted to give his two daughters, the optionality to either go into a family business or to just know that entrepreneurship is accessible. It is an option. And as much as, you and I are sort of card-carrying entrepreneurs, it cannot be discounted that a lot of that came from the fact that you had someone in your life who was an entrepreneur, and I did too. And even though my family did not call themselves, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He immigrated from Hungary to Canada in 1956. He sold eggs at a farmer's market for his entire life. He would never call himself an entrepreneur. He would say he's surviving. He's putting food on the table. He's making a living. But he was an entrepreneur. My grandmother had a textile business. This idea that you create a bit of an entrepreneurial flywheel by showing others that entrepreneurship is a thing, it exists, it's accessible, that is how you turn this into a movement. And actually, one of the greatest parts of social media, there's some bad stuff too, but the greatest parts of social media is that a lot more entrepreneurs are beginning now to talk about their stories, their ventures, their process. And so other people are seeing and saying, wow, I can do it too. That person built, a $10 million business with very little capital, with very little experience. And I think that's a new thing. 20 years ago, there was not enough entrepreneurs out there. And the ones that were out there, they weren't talking enough about it. And entrepreneurship is simply, whether you're an artist or you're a physician or you're a lawyer or you're just anybody, you're a chef, you can take an entrepreneurial approach to these things. And I see it on Shopify every single day. And so it's really amazing.
And It is honestly seeing kind of how many ways that entrepreneurship can go. It's not just starting a company of something that's never existed before. It's taking an existing career and transforming it into something brand new
Yeah.
and something unique. And this kind of actually transitions into my next question very well. Uh, a lot of people weren't exposed to entrepreneurship. I wasn't exposed to entrepreneurship until my dad, told me about his experience in business. But without that interaction, I would have never known that,
Right. Well,
entrepreneurship had
your
a
origin story would have been different, right? The origin story, how old are you when you started your business?
I was 7 years old when I came up with the idea, but I was 9 when we started
Okay, so you're
selling.
9. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And like I am in awe. I am just incredibly impressed. I'm just such a fan. So the answer to the question, or the answer to the problem of, I want to eat candy, but my parents don't want me eating candy because of the sugar. For most people would be, I'll just have a little bit of candy. Your answer was, what if I created delicious candy that had no sugar in it? The reason that you are wired that way is, one, I think because you are very entrepreneurial, you're obviously very ambitious, incredibly smart, but also because someone in your life at some point said, that's not a stupid idea. And you think about how many people think about, I'm like loving my Ember coffee mug right now. I just use it every day. It's like, Ember's amazing. Shopify merchant, super cool, keeps it hot. It's exactly 138 degrees perfectly all the time. It's amazing. At some point, someone had an idea and said, I'm going to put a battery and a Bluetooth receiver into a coffee mug. And a lot of people would be like, that is stupid. Why would you do that? But someone told the founder of Ember, that's actually not a bad idea. You should go do that. And someone told you, hey, making sugar-free candy that tastes delicious, that's not a bad idea. You should go do that too. We need more of those conversations. We need more people in our lives, whether they're parents or family members or friends or the social media community, encouraging each other to be like, that is not a bad idea. Go and try that. And I think the reason that it's different now in 2021 and the last couple of years is that when your dad was starting his t-shirt business, or my grandfather was starting to sell eggs, there was a problem. The problem was the cost of failure was really high. For most people starting a small business, you mortgage your house, you take out a loan from the bank, you borrow money from friends or family if you even have that option. But today, the cost of failure is trending about as close to zero as it's ever going to be. It will never be zero because you have what's called opportunity cost, which is what you forego doing one thing versus another. But it's never been less expensive, and it's never been as accessible than it is right now to start businesses. And so I hope the next vintage and generation of entrepreneurs have an easier time doing it, because the tools are there. There's certainly the community, but not enough people know that it is something they can do. Most people don't know that they have the permission to try their hand at entrepreneurship. And we all need someone in our life, or in a ideal situation, many people in our lives, that just blow some air and some wind into our sails, that give us a little bit of a kick in the butt when we're down, when when there's that self-doubt and insecurity that pops up. And by the way, that still happens even at any stage. I'm the president of a $100 billion plus company. It sounds crazy to say that, but even I have lots of self-doubt. I worry a lot about where we're going next and how we find the next, 10 million entrepreneurs on Shopify. So it doesn't go away. You just learn to manage it better. But we need these people in our lives that are fundamentally these catalysts to continue. And I think that's what your dad did for you. And certainly my parents did that for me.
Yes, yes. And yeah, I think, that's $1 million idea right there, to start a community of almost a support group for, you go, do, what you want to do, follow your dreams. And that's what I found is so important, to start kids off early.
Yeah.
Teach them in school that entrepreneurship is an option. You can, I mean, yes, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a veterinarian, you can be an astronaut. Those are my options. That's what I grew up thinking, oh, okay, I can be one of those, 5 choices. But then, then the whole world of opportunity opened up to me when I realized you can do your own, you can create your own company, you can write your own path. You do not have to take the same road that everyone else has. And so that it really is, just an inspiring revelation.
Well, you remember also, if you think about the history of entrepreneurship, or the history, frankly, of small business, if you go back 3 or 4 generations, a lot of people that were small business owners, because again, the term entrepreneurship just wasn't around the same way. It didn't have the same brand equity that it does right now, which is kind of cool, kind of interesting, kind of exciting, an adventure. When you go back, what you realize is a lot of people that became small business owners, they had no choice. And so when their children were growing up, the next generation was growing up, they're like, don't be a small business owner. Go be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a professional. Because that is a quote unquote safe career. So in fact, in many cases, not only is it difficult to be an entrepreneur, but there was an entire generation of parents saying, I want a better life for you than I had for myself. And that was go be an astronaut, a doctor, a lawyer, or a dentist, whatever that might be. And now I think because entrepreneurship has taken on different equity, different brand, a different connotation. Now I'm saying to my children, like, if you don't want to go to university or you don't want to go be a lawyer, you don't have to. Like, you should go do something that truly makes you happy. And that feeds into sort of this idea of work-life balance that, a lot of our parents and grandparents had thought about work-life balance. And you and I've talked about this. We just look at it differently. For us, the idea of work and life being separate is strange. Mm-hmm. It's all just kind of mixed up together. And by it being mixed up together, it means we can do our life's work. And so my Sunday night feels like my Friday night. And working on a Saturday morning feels like working on a Monday. It doesn't matter to me because I'm filling up my life with things that truly it inspire me, that make me feel great. And I can share these gifts with the world, just like you do.
Yes. And on the flip side, you have to, when undertaking starting a company, or trying to, reconfigure your career to make you happy, you have to be passionate about it. Because when you're starting a small business, you're gonna have to work it into your life because it's not a regular 9 to 5. And if you treat it like a 9 to 5, it's just not gonna happen. You have to be passionate and you have to put the effort in. And from everything that you've said, I think everyone on here can tell, if they didn't already know, that you're just such an incredible entrepreneur and have such an interesting and intricate mindset of this whole industry and career. But I'm curious, which is something that I actually don't know. How did your journey at Shopify begin? And how did you work your way up to being the president? I mean, that's such a prestigious job.
Well, thank you. I've been at Shopify now for a third of my life. So I'm 37. So I've been at Shopify for almost a third of my life. I've been at Shopify for almost 12 years. And I started not as someone working at Shopify. I started as a merchant, just like you. After undergrad, a mentor of mine that I've had since I was a kid, his name is Phil. He convinced me to go to law school after McGill, but not to become a lawyer. And that was sort of, now I think it's probably more common to see that, but in 2005, you went to law school to become a lawyer. I mean, you went to medical school to become a doctor. You went to whatever school to become a whatever thing.
In 2005, I was born.
Okay, right. So I went to law school in 2005. And I went to become a better entrepreneur. This particular mentor was teaching law at the University of Ottawa. And he convinced me to go to law school, to become a better entrepreneur. He sort of looked at it like finishing school for entrepreneurship, a place where I can go to think better, read better, write better, be more articulate, critical reason, debate, all the great stuff that frankly law school did for me. So I moved to Ottawa in 2005, had no friends, no family, never even been to Ottawa. It's the capital of Canada, for those that are not from Canada. and moved here. I had no friends or family. And the way that I began to make lots of friends was I would always find out where the entrepreneurs were hanging out. And so I'd come to, I lived in Montreal and in South Florida and lived in Toronto for a bit. But the way that I would find out where my tribe was ask where the entrepreneurs were. And I ended up meeting a bunch of entrepreneurs that were hanging out at this coffee shop every Friday night in Ottawa. And one of those entrepreneurs was Toby, our founder and our CEO. And Toby had, a year earlier, had started a snowboard shop. And he didn't like that there was not really any great software on the market to sell something online. You either had to sell on like eBay, or you had to give like $1 million to SAP or IBM, or one of these big enterprise companies. He didn't have that kind of money. Mm-hmm. So he wrote this piece of software to sell these snowboards. And he realized very quickly that other people may want to use the software as well to sell their own products. And the aha moment of Shopify was, the snowboard business is a good business, but maybe the software business is a great business. And that's around the time where I met him, and I became one of Shopify's first merchants. I moved from a B2B wholesale t-shirt business, making shirts for universities, to being a B2C business that focused on licensed t-shirts, direct to consumer, using Shopify. And I think I was store number 136 or something like that on Shopify. So I was a merchant. I spent most of my law school time, and I went to business school as well, selling these t-shirts. And then in 2009, I called Toby and I said that what Shopify had done for me was so much bigger and more impactful than simply this online store creation tool. It was bigger than a piece of software. It meant that I was able to not only sit in class and learn and study and get all the benefits of law school, but I was able also to make a living concurrently at the very same time. That I was able to sell my t-shirts to a global audience sitting in tax law class without very much money at all, with no experience. I thought that experience should be made available to anyone, so that anyone in the world that has an idea or a product or even a service or whatever they have to share with the world can easily do that. And Shopify was the greatest vehicle for that I'd ever encountered. And I was the example of how it worked. And so in 2009, I called him and said, I really, really, really want to join you. And I was the first non-engineer. And my pitch to him, I guess, was, let me take care of all the business stuff. You focus on technology and product and design, and let me figure out a way to commercialize all this stuff. And that was in 2009. So I moved. I was living in Toronto at the time, working at a law firm as a lawyer. Hated it. Hated my life. It was terrible. And I moved back to Ottawa, and that was how I started. And then over time, the way that we sort of think about working at Shopify is this idea of requalification, that if I want to remain the president of Shopify, or I want to keep my role, not only do I have to keep growing, but I every single year I have to be the best candidate for the job on the planet. And that may seem a little bit nerve-wracking and stress-inducing and anxiety-inducing, but actually that's incredibly motivating to me to think about, okay, if I want to be, currently Shopify is the largest company in Canada. We are one of the largest companies on the planet. But that actually helps motivate me to think about, what are my deficiencies? Where do I really need to grow? What do I actually have to think about in terms of being the best president of any technology company? How do I requalify? And so in that way, Shopify continues to be interesting. That gets more interesting every single year, because I have to get good at all these new things. And it feels like this amazing puzzle. And when you solve the puzzle, what you end up with is, I get to share what I love, which is entrepreneurship, with people everywhere. And it's been an amazing journey. And I feel very grateful for being a part of this.
Yes. And honestly, during the pandemic was when Zolli Candy, my company, if you don't know, for like viewers, we actually created our own Shopify. And we decided, nobody's going into stores. We need to figure out a way to switch our business plan. I mean, we were almost strictly in retail.
Yeah, it was a wholesale business from the beginning, right?
Yes. And, we never sold on our own. We had never had any direct to consumer anything in the 5 years that we've been selling. We never had. And then we had done a project with Shopify right before the pandemic with Shopify plus the like media portion. And I remember thinking, this is such a cool platform. This is something that, like, how could we do something with Shopify? And then, bam, the pandemic hits, and we're like, we need to pivot our sales, really our structure. And we turned to Shopify. And honestly, I have seen so much joy and success from selling direct to consumer, because there's that connection that you don't get when you're selling at retail.
And a feedback cycle, and the fact that the people that are buying from you are the people that are enjoying the delicious candy. That
exactly.
idea, the direct to consumer thing as a business model, for a lot of folks, they do feel like it's a fad, that it's going to go away or something. But actually, if you think about the history of retail, of commerce, of business, the baker sold bread to the consumer. The cobbler sold shoes to the consumer. Direct to consumer is always the way commerce and retail took place. What happened was, as sort of a student of retail, I think a lot about this stuff. This is maybe a little bit too, retail nerd, but in 1876, this guy named John Wanamaker created Wanamaker's department stores. The first one was in Philadelphia. And what Wanamaker effectively did was he brought a bunch of brands under one roof. And he created effectively like wholesale. He created this idea that I will sell your products on your behalf to the end consumer. And for that, I will take a cut. And I'm entitled to my cut or my profit margin because I have distribution. I have stores. Stores give me access to the end consumer. And that's kind of how retail worked from 1876 to 1985, 1990. It was a lot of wholesale. It was a lot of this idea of department stores and a lot of, B2B sales, and then the retailer then made the final sale. What that did, unfortunately, was it created a gap between the maker or the brand and the end consumer. And the internet comes along. And the internet basically says, I'm going to democratize distribution. I'm going to make it so that anyone, anywhere can sell to anyone, anywhere. And that's what, Shopify leveraged that technology, that the internet to create this accessibility to direct to consumer. But direct to consumer is an amazing business model that I don't think is ever going away. Will there be room for wholesale and department stores? Yeah, absolutely. The key though for these department stores, and you've seen, a lot of department stores, Barney's or Macy's, or a lot of companies really struggled. Some went out of business in the last couple of years. What they forgot was that they need to create value to justify their margin. And so if I can buy a boosted board, skateboard from Best Buy, or I can buy it from boostedboard.com, if I'm going to buy it from Best Buy, there needs to be real value add beyond just the fact that Best Buy has a store, physical store, and boostedboard.com does not. And I think we're going to see some of the most exciting times for retail coming up in the next decade or so, which will be a hybrid of direct to consumer, incredible curation, incredible value add. It'll be online, it'll be offline, it'll be on social commerce, it'll be on different marketplaces. But I think this is going to be a really exciting time for commerce coming up.
Yes, I completely agree. And I honestly, it's going to be a bummer for a lot of retail chains. And honestly, with companies like Shopify that make it so accessible to shop things that, people have never heard of, and people have never, in their wildest dreams imagined a candy that cleans your teeth, but they can get that on Shopify, and they can't get that at the local, gas station.
Totally.
They're gonna order it from their bed to their house, rather than driving in their car.
And also, from a consumer perspective, I'm just like I have all these. I really like notebooks. I have all these like really nice notebooks, and I have tons of them all over my desk. I like to write, whether I'm doing notes for work, or this sort of gratitude journal that I use in the mornings.
Me too. Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm a lister.
Me too. Yeah, I think it's valuable. Like I always have tons of notes going everywhere. The fact that I can find people that are so deeply passionate about making beautiful leather-bound notebooks and that I, as a consumer, can vote with my wallet for them to exist in the world, that is awesome. That I, as a consumer, can decide what products I want to exist, not by hitting a button or by, writing, but just simply by buying from them and saying, I love what you are doing. I am telling the world that I think you should exist, and more of you should exist. That, I think, makes also this new era of retail incredibly exciting, because it gives power back to founders, makers, entrepreneurs. And it takes away some power from retailers and department stores that simply just did not scale, did not create new value.
And I guess, my next question kind of is, how does it make you feel? I can tell, from your tone, from the way that you speak about Shopify, it's something you're really passionate about. And for me, Shopify became a really big part of my life recently. How does it make you feel that you are, such a driving force in facilitating these entrepreneurs' dreams coming true on Shopify?
It's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, what Shopify helps people do is find their own versions of success. For some, it's building a multi-million-dollar company and brand. For others, it's solving a problem. For others, it's inspiring their children to know that entrepreneurship is accessible. For others, it's just making enough so they can quit the job that they hate and pursue their life's work. There is no greater way for, at least from my perspective, for me to add value in the world than through this vehicle of Shopify. And what I really love is that when you think of a lot of software companies, the relationship between the users of the software and the software, there tends to be some sort of
disconnect.
Yeah, right. There's it's very much a transactional relationship. I mean, think of your, who you buy domains from, or your what's another good example? Your accounting software. You like them, they're good, but you don't. But the relationship that we have with more than 1 million merchants on Shopify is different. We are their work. We are the most important piece of software they use every single day. Now, that comes with deep responsibility. The reason that you hear us announcing deals with, in the last 6 months, installments with a firm, or a new channel with Walmart, or a new ad deal with TikTok, is that if you want to be the most important piece of software that people use, if you want to be their quote unquote work, you need to make sure the onus is on us as the software provider, as the platform, to make sure that whatever their version of retail is, whatever their version of commerce is, that they can do everything from Shopify. And that trust they put in us, we do not take for granted. But the responsibility that we wear, every one of us at Shopify feels that. We're more than 5,000 or 6,000 people that work at Shopify now, all over the world in more than 17 cities and countries. If we want to maintain that, we want to requalify to be their work every year, it requires us to make sure that we always give everyone what they need. And so your experience on Shopify is going to be very different than someone else who just decided to use us to sell on Instagram, or just wants to cross-sell on Walmart and Pinterest, or wants to sell in a physical location. Everyone's reason for using Shopify at the beginning is different, but the value that they all get is effectively that of a retail operating system. And they only realize that once they spend time on Shopify and realize, wait, I can get capital from Shopify. I can get payments rates. I can get shipping rates. I can do fulfillment. And that is what, more and more I've been talking about this little kind of factoid, this little stat, that Shopify is now the second largest online retailer in America. So Amazon is the largest checkout. The second largest checkout is actually Shopify. Now, the reason I've only started to use it is because we're not a retailer. We're not a merchant. We're not a store. We're a platform. But if you were to pretend for a second that we were a retailer, where you end up going is here. When we go to see the shipping companies, or the payment companies, or the capital companies, or anyone we want to partner with, we walk in the door like we are the second largest retailer. And they give us incredible rates, incredible economies of scale, incredible advantages because of our size. And if we were the second largest retailer, we would keep that for ourselves. But because we're not a retailer, we actually give those rates, we give those economies of scale to all of the merchants on Shopify. And that creates this leveling of the playing field that simply would not exist. And it's sort of like, you think about it, like every merchant on Shopify is this tiny little dot. But when you bring them all together, you get the sun. And that's how we're able to give merchants on Shopify this unfair, this competitive advantage whereby they can compete with the largest companies. And that's how, you've been able to scale, and companies like Bombas and Allbirds and Gymshark and Beyond Yoga and Mike D's Barbecue and all these other great companies were able to scale because the playing field, it's still not level, and we're still working on it, but it's more level now than ever before.
Yes, and that's so key, and it gives business owners hope. It gives entrepreneurs hope that there's already so much risk, and there's already so much that you feel weighing on your shoulders if you fail as an entrepreneur. But when you have a big brand like Shopify behind you saying, it's possible. Yeah. Now, it's even, and you can succeed. There is a higher rate of success now. I mean, it creates, so much comfort for, those entrepreneurs who, and I know they're already doubting themselves. Yeah. And so for the people watching, what has been the most valuable thing that you've learned about entrepreneurs that, it could be a quality, it could be, a tactic, something that you've seen in every, great entrepreneur that you've met or you've seen or you've talked to, that you think other entrepreneurs should try to exhibit or, use to their advantage?
When the pandemic started, call it March 15th or so, at least that's when it really hit hard in Canada. I watched two things happen, or two different scenarios take place. On one hand, everyone was caught off guard. We all sort of were worried about ourselves, our families, our businesses. Everything was kind of super tense. Anxiety levels were really elevated. But I discovered two different paths that people were taking. On one hand, I watched these resistant entrepreneurs, these resistant retailers, business owners. And it felt a little bit like, they were, I like to use this metaphor, but there was this tidal wave coming, and they saw the tidal wave and they were like, no. And they ran for the shore and they grabbed their towel. And really what they were doing was they were waiting for the pandemic to end. They were waiting for the tidal wave to go back into the ocean. And then I saw, and they struggled, and it was obvious. But then I saw this other category, this category of entrepreneur, business owner that were resilient. And they didn't grab their towel. They grabbed their surfboard. Earlier on, there was someone who joined this live named Stephen Becta, who's one of the most iconic restaurateurs in Canada. He owns 3 of the best restaurants in the country. And I was skiing with him the day that the pandemic hit. We were at a little ski resort not too far from here. And I remember him looking at his phone and saying, oh, the restaurants are all going to have to close. Within 24 hours, he had a brand new business called Curated by Becta. It's on Shopify. And he completely pivoted his business into this COVID appropriate model. He's going to have he completely changed his business model. He opened up a wine shop, online wine shop. He did, meal kits. And I saw that from a lot of people. I saw that, your story is exemplary of this. Your story is exactly what I mean. You decided, hey, wholesale is not going to work right now. We got to go DTC. We got to set up shop on Shopify. Ben Francis, a Gymshark, said no one's going to gyms anymore. So putting up content about what to wear in the gym or what to do in the gym is irrelevant. They changed it. It became a Home Shark. Because now all of a sudden you have this totally different model, this different world. And that, I think, that idea of resilience, that is the trait, unequivocally, that I think the best entrepreneurs have, and you certainly have it, and the best entrepreneurs on Shopify have it, and the people that inspire me the most have it. When they see a tidal wave coming, they grab their surfboard. They do not run for the shore. And COVID exposed that dichotomy between resilience and resistance in such a crazy way that it was just obvious who was where. And even on, from a public company perspective, you heard this on the earnings calls. You heard, big companies say COVID's really hurting our business. And you heard other people saying we found a brand new business. And you heard some people saying we're shutting down everything, and others saying we're looking for new opportunities. And I think it's those resilient entrepreneurs that we're going to look back on and say, they did it. They used their instinct. They used the tools that they had acquired through entrepreneurship. Big company, small, didn't really matter. But that instinct to see what's happening, to adapt, to reconfigure everything you're doing, and not to have the baggage of, I'm a restaurateur, I need to run physical restaurants. That's baggage. Whereas the resilient one says, my job is to deliver delicious food and get it into the mouths, into the hands of people that love it.
And I'm an entrepreneur. And that doesn't mean just one thing. Right. That means, I have to adapt. Entrepreneurship is all about adapting. And you said it perfectly, that it's all about resilience. Yeah. And so I like to do a little kind of fun end segment to end Entrepreneur Chit-Chat, where I do a little speed round of just a couple more fun questions that I've compiled. So like you mentioned in the very beginning, you're a dad. And so if your kid or kids came to you and said, Dad, I have a business idea and I think it's going to be a really good business, what would you say to them?
Try it. What are 3 ways you can try it right now? 3 things you can do right now to get a sense of whether or not there is product market fit, whether there's demand, whether there's a there. That's what I would say to them. I think that is one of the benefits of my kids growing up in 2021 is that they can put up a quick Shopify store. I mean, the kids are 2 and 4, so they're a couple years away from setting up a store on Shopify. But I would say go test it, because again, the cost of failure is so low. They can set up a store, a single product store. They can run $30 or $20 worth of ads on Instagram or TikTok or Snap or whatever. They can see whether or not there's an appetite for this type of product. If they sell nothing, that in itself is insightful. That's what I would do.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I honestly, I wish more parents felt that they could, share that kind of support with their children, because a lot of kids have come to me and said, I have a great idea, but I don't have the support to do it. I don't know how to do it. And so having someone in your life as amazing as you are and having such a cool dad mentor, I'm sure your kids will be very, very grateful to have that kind of.
I hope so. As I mentioned, my wife's also an entrepreneur, and a couple of years ago when Bailey, our eldest, was born, we used to go for these really nice walks around the neighborhood, and Lindsay would always complain that there was no great ice cream shop. And so a month later, there was an ice cream shop there. Lindsay created Sunday school, and there was an ice cream shop, and she just went and figured out how to do it. She figured out where to do it. She figured out how to test it. My hope is that our kids see that, not because they should run a technology company, or they should go run an ice cream shop, or they should go build, because I want them to see how we solve problems. And you certainly have that in spades. And I want them to do that, even if they decide not to actually go and start a big company or do anything that is like what Lindsay and I have done. I just want them to be resourceful
and have some of those entrepreneurship qualities, because really you don't have to be an entrepreneur to think like an entrepreneur. And I think it's a good way to go about life, to have a mindset like that. So have you ever met any of your big role models?
I have. I've been really lucky to. I have looked up to Seth Godin since I was a child. I think I read Purple Cow when I was a kid. And Seth is now not only just a good friend, he's a mentor and someone I try to speak to all the time. He has been one of the most impactful people in my life. And for those of you that don't know Seth Godin, he's just, he's well known as being one of the world's greatest marketers, but he truly is an exceptional human being. He's a great dad, great husband, great friend. And I've learned more from him on the personal side than on the business side, but Seth would be the one that I have to pinch myself that I have a relationship with him.
That's awesome. What's like the best part of your job as, as this facilitator for people's dreams? Is, I'm sure there's a lot of best parts. But what would you say is the very best?
There's an underdog story underneath all of this that I find to be so inspiring. We don't really talk about underdogs when we talk about entrepreneurs, but my feeling is that a lot of us were underdogs. We were doubted. We were told that's a silly idea. There were people who didn't believe in our visions. And the fact that these underdogs, or as the term I'm using a lot more right now is the rebels. Shopify is, we are arming the rebels. We want the underdogs. We want the rebels. We want the people that don't necessarily have everything that they need to be really, really successful. And that idea that when I look at some of the stores on Shopify that I've followed since day one, Allbirds, for example, I'm actually meeting with Joey, co-founder of Allbirds, in a couple hours from now. We're doing an interview together. And when I watch this passionate team at Allbirds create what is now one of the biggest sneaker companies on the planet, rivaling Nike and Reebok, and that's the underdog story. And those stories didn't exist this way 10, 20 years ago. They didn't exist 200 years ago. I mean, yeah, you have the Walt Disney and you have the Henry Ford and you have the Rockefellers. I mean, you have people like that, but they're few and far between. Now that is happening all the time. Every single day, you have these insurgents becoming the incumbent. You have these underdogs becoming the leaders. There is no better way, as I can see it, for me to spend my time than helping more of these underdogs succeed. Because one, they're just more interesting. I love the fact that Gymshark is worth more than Reebok is. Why? Because it's unlikely that would ever happen. That is not a normal thing, but it is now. That is what, that is the best part of my job.
That's incredible. And I can see how, you have so much passion for what you do. What has been the most meaningful award or accolade that you've ever received?
It's funny. I don't know if you can see this stuff, but I only have, Shorty, you can see it. Actually, you can see it right there. Right there. I actually only have 2 that are up. And I've been lucky to get a bunch of these things, and they're always really nice. But the 2 that I actually have up in my office are, one, it's the Shopify IPO. Basically, I think they call it the deal tombstone, just because for any entrepreneur standing at the New York Stock Exchange and taking your company public, man, there's nothing like it. I'm not a highly emotional person. I don't cry very often, but I teared up standing at the same place that Henry Ford stood and ringing the bell with my friends who we built this great company together with, and looking down and seeing my wife and Toby's wife and his kids down there, and the people that believed in us when no one else did. Tim Ferriss, who's a friend, we brought him to the New York Stock Exchange because Tim believed in us before anyone did. Tim has been an advisor to Toby and mine since like 2010. So we brought Tim to this New York Stock Exchange, and looking down and seeing those people there cheering us on, it was just so validating. And so I have that one. And then the other one I have is Angel Investor of the Year. One of the things that I really want to do is the moment that I had any additional capital to invest, I wanted to pay it forward. I wanted to make sure that I do this with my wife, Lindsay, and I have invested now in 50 companies, 50 startups, from amazing, sake companies. We just invested in Soto, which is our favorite sake brand, to lots of tech companies, lots of great Canadian entrepreneurs, lots of entrepreneurs who typically wouldn't get funding because of, they just don't come, they're unlikely entrepreneurs, underrepresented entrepreneurs. And so the Angel Investor of the Year award and the IPO deal tombstone are the only two things I have in my office that are even remotely like that.
Yeah, I mean, I almost teared up just going to the New York Stock Exchange and looking at I got to stand and hit the gavel for a little
Awesome.
Instagram moment.
Awesome.
Obviously, my company wasn't going public, but it was just,
Not yet.
it's a surreal experience getting to experience something like that.
Yeah.
And getting to, I believe it was Canada Goose, the Coke brand. I got to see them go public.
Oh, that's so funny.
And so
Yeah.
seeing kind of that experience and that almost, it almost goes in slow motion. They're ringing the bell and everyone's cheering, and it almost gets like quiet in the New York Stock Exchange, which is, it's not a quiet place.
Yeah, everything
It's
kind
a
of
loud place.
stands still for a second, and it's amazing. Danny Reese, who's the CEO of Canada Goose, is a great friend and a Canadian entrepreneur. He's amazing, and he took a company, by the way. His grandfather started Canada Goose like 75 years ago, and what he's done is amazing. But it's an interesting thing, and the reason it's interesting is not because you now have publicly traded equity and liquidity. None of that stuff. I mean, it's fun, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that when you go public, you allow others to share in your journey as well. And we've had these great investors that have been with us basically from day one, who are along on the ride with us, and they want to feel a part of Shopify. And it also, we want to build a 100-year company, and we're about 15 years in. So we thought that being public would help us become a 100-year company, and so far it has.
That's incredible. And finally, this one is the most fun one in my opinion. Have you tried Zolli Candy?
I have. After you came to speak to the entire Shopify team, we all got a bunch of Zolli Candy, and it was delicious. Although I hesitate showing it to my children yet; they're still really, really young, because because they don't have the discernment to know, actually, this is not regular candy. This is good for you. And
keep it that way as long as you can.
So I'm going to keep it that way for now. But I have tried Zolli, and I love the story of Zolli. I love the product. Most importantly, I think your story is so inspirational. I want people to know that you had this idea when you were 7. You started this company when you were 9. Now you're 15, I think.
Yes.
And
so
you
old.
And you were challenging the biggest companies on the planet. That, my friend, that is entrepreneurship. That is what I love so much. This is the leveling of the playing field that gets me up every single morning. That some 9-year-old can go and compete with the largest companies in the world, and they can be successful at that. That wasn't possible 50 years ago, 30 years ago. It wasn't even possible 20 years ago. That's a new thing, and you're the poster child of it.
Thank you so much. And just a little FYI, our new products will be coming your way, just because we just actually have released more flavors on Shopify exclusively. So it's a cool thing for us to be able to share the whole line of Zolli on Shopify. And also, of course, we have to send them to the guy that is making it happen and making it possible for entrepreneurs like myself to continue to grow. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun. Thanks for everyone watching. It's a really important and exciting time for entrepreneurship, and I'm grateful that you invited me on, and hope everyone has a great day, and go out there and make no small plans.
And where can everyone follow you and follow your journey?
At Harley on Instagram, at HarleyF on Twitter is the best place to find me. And I have a new YouTube series that I just started last week. We're going to have you on that. It's called The Life of a Rebel. And you can find that on YouTube/HarleyF. And have a great day, everyone.
Yes, everyone keep smiling, and make sure to check Harley out. He's absolutely incredible, as I'm sure you saw. Yes, keep smiling and always, make the world a better place and share a smile. Bye, everyone, and thank you so much for watching Entrepreneur Chit-Chat.